For the best experience, please use headphones. Calling all adventurers. I repeat, calling all adventurers. One job here for you, and the client is me. Word has gotten back to me that one of our receiver boxes, used to listen to this broadcast, has been confiscated by the Ardros City Guard. It has been damaged, but if I know them, they'll try to fix it. If any adventurers of the, let's say, sneakier disposition hear this, get that box. I don't care if you bring it in or destroy it completely. We don't want the king and his cronies listening in to our bedtime stories, do we? Whoever removes the box from guard possession gets paid. Now, let's see some hustle. Otherwise, it's a quiet one today, so we'll continue on with the story as usual. I hope you're settled in and ready. Trees flew past the window, flickering early morning sun into the carriage. I'd fallen asleep shortly after we boarded the train, but only managed about 4 hours before the jostling had woken me up again. I felt surprisingly rested, despite all that had occurred in Solemn. I mean, I still ached something fierce, but my eyelids were no longer drooping.
So, Lord Mulbrand, what plans do you have for when we reach the city?
First, I shall establish myself at my family's permanent suite in the Emerald Vale Hotel. Once that is done, I'll begin reaching out to contacts to try and locate those responsible for selling Collinsworth out to Lockridge. And the two of you?
I wanted to sightsee a little, but, well, that'll have to go on the back burner.
Your optimism regarding the possibility of uninterrupted tourism is astonishing, given our track record. With that said, we'll also have to set up a base of operations. I expect we'll be in the city for a while.
If you've nowhere in mind, I can offer an affordable alternative.
Oh?
My family once owned a garment store in the Merchants District. It was shut down and cleaned out for renovations, but I never got around to starting them. Here's the key.
How benevolent of you, Lord Harrington.
You're very welcome. If you go there, I shouldn't have trouble finding you if I have any updates. But I expect you'll have some time to yourselves before I turn up anything.
Excellent. We do need a new change of clothes for Messy over here.
Sheepishly, I looked down at my blood-soaked shirt and nodded. Oh, we also need to get this mark appraised. I held up the marking on my wrist.
Oh, yes. Speaking of the marking, why didn't you use it against Lockridge?
It's become something of a hidden ace up my sleeve. But I feel it's a card I gotta keep close to the chest. Don't want everyone knowing about it.
Understandable. Well, that's all for our itinerary. But we'll see what the capital throws our way.
Hey, could be interesting.
Next stop is Sistia, where this train terminates.
We have arrived.
I looked through the window as the train crested the brow of a hill and we entered the agricultural district outside the city walls. Farmland opened wide beneath me. An ocean of gold and green stitched together with winding dirt lanes and the glint of irrigation canals. Beyond them, nestled at the edge of a vast shimmering lake, laid Sistia, the beating heart of the kingdom of Alariel. The lake itself stretched far into the distance, wide and calm. Its waters fed into a river so long it vanished over the horizon, a silver artery that carried life all the way to the ocean. From this height, the city revealed itself in near-perfect concentric rings, districts laid out like ripples from a stone dropped into still water. The outermost circles bustled with the marks of toil and trade. Yet each ring further in rose higher than the last, not only in elevation, but in refinement, cleanliness and prosperity. Scenery changed from cobblestone roads and dense wooden housing to impossibly green gardens threaded with paths that near glimmered in the sun. Slender spires and grand domes shouldered together, connected by rooftops glistening in shades of gentle blue against the white masonry beneath. At the very core stood the royal palace, a bastion in pale stone, commanding the skyline with marble cliff walls and towers that threatened to pierce the very heavens. There was something surreal about it all. Sistia seemed less a city built by mortal hands and more a vision conjured from a dream. From that distance, it felt too serene, too ordered, too radiant, so I was very curious to see what the city was actually like. Lost in the vision, I nearly missed it as we quickly entered and exited the walls and began slowing to a stop in Sistia West Station.
Right, well, thank you for the train tickets and the shop key, Harrington. We shall bid you farewell for now and reconvene later.
Harrington tipped an imaginary hat with a smile before walking further into the station, luggage in hand, and disappeared into a crowd of similarly dressed people. The sheer variety of people we passed on the way out of the station was startling. Humans are everywhere in Alariel, but elves, dwarves, and sprites were suddenly more numerous than I'd seen previously. I thought it truly splendid. A melting pot of cultures and ideas that could bring the best out of us all. Well, it's a nice idea. Stepping out onto the street, we began walking in the direction of the Merchants District to take a look at the shop Harrington lent us. The city wasn't so different from Solemn, maybe a bit brighter and larger in scale, but the overall feeling of it was quite similar. While we were walking along Station Road, a small cloaked figure bumped into Val with quite some force.
Oh!
Excuse me?
I'm terribly sorry.
A sprite. I could just about see his face, despite his head being lowered in apology. His cloak was scuffed and his clothing ragged. A dusty satchel hung from his shoulder.
It's quite all right.
Please, accept this gold piece as a token of my sincerity.
Oh wow, there's really no need.
I insist. And if you're looking for a place to eat, may I recommend the Leafstrider Cafe? Just around the corner, it has truly wonderful cakes.
He pressed the coin into Val's palm, gave a deep but rushed bow, and turned to leave before she could protest. She watched until the sprite disappeared into the crowd.
What an odd fellow. Try Leafstrider Cafe for cake, he said.
You know, I could definitely go for some cake right now. It's been ages since I've had anything sweet.
Okay, sounds good to me. I wonder if they'll have opera cake.
Val pocketed the coin, and we continued around the corner.
So, pleased you finally made it to the capital?
Only 3 months later than planned.
Hey, you made good time, all things considered.
I suppose so. Didn't go the way I expected, but it certainly hasn't been boring.
Of that we can be certain.
Despite the sprite's poor directions that had cost us a few extra minutes of searching, we had found the place.
Ah, there's the cafe.
The cafe was small, but had a warmth to it that you could feel from the outside. Through the large window at the front, I couldn't see much beyond the general spacious interior, thanks to reflecting light. We approached the front door. Excellent. Hoping for something with banana in it. Oh, if they do. At first, I wasn't sure what happened. Blinding light, a rush of extreme heat, then weightlessness followed quickly by pain. I blinked the dots away from my vision as the ringing in my ears intensified. It took me half a minute to be able to see properly. It was utter devastation. The windows, door, and a portion of the brick wall that made up the front of Leafstrider Cafe had been blown away. Rubble covered the street. People scrambled to find loved ones or an authority figure. From a glance, it seemed like very few people had been hurt, mostly just shaken up. I had taken the blast at near point-blank range, however, and was struggling to find my footing. Val? Where are you?
I'm here. I'm here.
Following the voice, I watched Val emerge from the debris that was once a market cart. Messy hair, soot-covered face, and disheveled clothing. But no blood. Oh, you're okay.
Yeah, I was standing on the other side of you. I think you shielded me from most of the blast. Are you okay?
I'm dizzy, but I'm still kicking. It isn't like they tell it in the stories. You can't just walk off as the flames erupt behind you. If you're close enough to an explosion to feel heat, you should already be dead. But still, I lived. My extremely dense muscle and bone must have provided some built-in blast-proofing. Val stumbled over Rubble back out into the street. She quickly pulled out her watch to check the time before stowing it back in her pocket.
Explosion at 10:51. Note that. Oh, that was too close. What happened?
Café exploded.
I know that, dingus. I meant how? Why?
We peered through the shattered store window as smoke poured out. There were 3 bodies inside.
Oh, stars. We've got casualties.
She poked her head in, inspecting the room before looking back to me.
We need to secure the area and make sure this was an isolated incident.
Understood. I'll get a vantage, and you clear the area. Check for survivors. We both nodded before splitting up. I jogged around a corner and found a narrow staircase leading to a rooftop. Climbing onto the mismatched orange slates, I clambered higher to steady myself against a chimney and surveyed the area for at least 2 minutes. Nothing. No unexpected smoke coming from anywhere else. No explosions. No screaming. I kept looking for anyone suspicious on the rooftops or moving down the streets, but nothing revealed itself to me. Returning to street level, I walked slower to avoid creating any more panic. Guards were already filling the area, clearing away debris and helping healers treat patients. I found Val talking to a guard captain while he inspected her mercenary identification.
I've already spoken to the owner of this establishment, and she has agreed to utilize our services on this issue. The victims need order and stability. We'll handle the perpetrators.
Sternly, the captain nodded, handed Val's ID back, turned away, and continued directing his men. Catching my approach from the corner of her eye, she waved me over.
All right. We've managed to get permission from the cafe owner to investigate, but in order to secure it from the guards, I had to offer our services for free.
Okay, that's fine with me.
Good. She's just over there. Let's see what she knows.
We approached a Sprite, maybe 30 years old, with chestnut hair and a messy ponytail. She was sat on a stool, fumbling with the hem of her soot-stained pinny, staring slack-jawed into the middle distance.
Miss Fenyor Leafstrider?
Yes? Oh, it's you. What do you need?
Thank you for letting us pursue justice on your behalf. We just had a few questions about the incident. Are you able to talk with us about it?
I'll try to tell you everything I can.
I pulled a crate from a stall and sat next to her. Firstly, I'm sorry about your shop. What can you tell us about the moments leading up to the explosion? Was there anything out of the ordinary? Anything can help, no matter how small it seems.
It was a little busier than normal. There were 4 patrons before. Oh, Light of Lumdion, they're all gone.
4 casualties? We only saw 3.
Danton, he's a sprite like me. He only arrived a minute or 2 before the blast. He sat in the middle of the room by the window. I think it was him that...
Okay, take a second to breathe. Who were the others?
I don't know. They weren't regulars.
Was there anything else that seemed strange? How did Danton seem emotionally?
Nothing else was out of the ordinary. But Danton, he did seem a little more reserved than normal. Almost sad, but putting up a good front. He was reading his journal as I went in the back room to get some more plates, and then...
Val and I made eye contact. A suspicion was forming in our minds. What can you tell us about Danton? Any and all information you have.
Danton Marstone was a treasure hunter. Worked mostly with very ancient stuff. He just came back from some big contract for a noble family, but I don't know which one. You'll really want to talk to. Oh, Makana, she doesn't know.
Makana?
Makana Zora. She's a student at the Institute of Study. They would visit 3 times a week for lunch together, always talking about stuff I didn't understand. Someone should tell her. She'll be devastated.
We'll make sure she's notified. Do you by chance have Danton's address?
Oh, yes, I do actually. Makana scheduled a birthday delivery for his home last year. It's in the logbook in the office. It should still be there.
We're going to look around the cafe for a bit. Do you have people who can support you after this?
Yes, my parents live outside the city. I'll stay with them until this gets sorted out.
I stood back up and followed Val back inside the cafe, which was now cleared of smoke. We began inspecting the blast zone.
There was indeed another person here. I couldn't see it at first because there's so little left of him. I thought his body was actually scorched furniture.
I guess there's nothing you can glean from what there is?
Not really. Whatever caused the explosion was powerful indeed. It nearly evaporated him. Fenyor said he had a journal, but that's long gone. The blast was strong, but so fast it couldn't melt the metal on his buckles and the coins in his pockets. I can't see a house key here. You got anything?
I began inspecting the other corpses. There was one by the door, and two on the other side behind where Danton was sitting, all with their backs to the walls. They weren't as badly burned as Danton. I've got 2 humans and a half-orc. Val, what's the laws on carrying blades in Sistia?
Very frowned upon in general, but not illegal.
So, why would 3 patrons who picked seats facing Danton all have daggers of the same style?
Same style?
Knightly daggers. No flair, no recognisable design or maker's mark. Completely untraceable. Could they be mass-produced?
Yes, I expect straight off the rack. I don't think these guys were normal patrons.
Would explain why Fenyor wasn't expecting them.
All right, let's get that address.
I followed Val into the back room and watched as she started going through a ledger marked with deliveries on the spine.
So, are we thinking the same thing?
That Danton intentionally blew himself up, along with 3 other people who were likely out to get him first?
I like it when we're synchronized. He probably had some kind of explosive in his bag.
That opens up so many questions, though. What was Danton doing that got him into that sort of trouble? Why did he take this course of action? Why here and now?
Well, let's start with the biggest questions. Who wanted Danton dead and why? We've got some leads. Here's his address.
And there's this Makana Zora. She may be able to answer a lot of these questions.
I agree. We'll head to her first. If Danton upset someone serious enough to send people to stalk him with daggers, there's a chance his acquaintances may be targets too. Let's make haste to the Institute, and we'll check his house later.
Val and I left the cafe and offered one more nod of resolute focus to that poor Leafstrider lady before leaving for the upper districts. A little update. The receiver box has been destroyed. That was quick as anything. Got to be some kind of record for job completion time. If you're the one responsible, open your box, hero. You'll find payment waiting inside. Back to business as usual. It took our carriage half an hour to reach the Garden District. The district held the Great Cathedral and the Institute of Study, connected via Seros Gardens, a vast public park. I had never seen a place so grand as the Institute of Study. Each tower capped with a spire of deep blue tile that melded with the sky and seemed to stretch higher for it. The campus unfurled before us like a small town dedicated to knowledge, ordered but alive. Robed scholars hurried past with arms full of scrolls, books, and strange contraptions through broad courtyards surrounding long avenues lined with flowering trees. I stared through the window while the carriage driver whittled on about some personal opinion that greatly frustrated Valuin, who struggled to stay respectful. Cracks were beginning to form in her diplomatic efforts.
See, I don't usually pick up elves, but you had the big guy vouching for you.
Uh-huh.
Nor do I pick up dwarves, or the little ones. Ugh, or orcs.
Crazy.
I mean, I'm sure some of them are good, but you gotta be careful with them. Especially orcs.
And that's all you took away from interacting with them?
Oh, no. I never speak to them.
Well, this is our stop.
Val opened the door before the carriage stopped moving, stepped out, dropped money onto the carriage floor, and stormed away while I followed. Blossoming rose gardens threaded between lecture halls and libraries. Birds nested in the spires above, and their songs mingled with the murmur of debate that seemed to echo everywhere. You seem upset.
I never miss this about human-dominated cities.
Strange sights were all around. A group of apprentices directed tiny motes of coloured flame into careful patterns in the air. In a different corner, a cluster of astronomers had wheeled out a brass telescope taller than a man, arguing over which angle would be best to capture the heavens in preparation for stargazing later. I get it. My dad talks like that sometimes.
That sucks.
He does.
All right, let's get inside.
We walked up the large stone steps to the Institute's grand oak doors. The entrance had swallowed us whole the moment we entered. The air was cool, touched with the faint scent of ink and wax polish. There seemed to be some unrest amongst the students as we moved further in.
Did you hear there was an explosion?
I did. Do you know who's responsible?
No idea.
Wow. News travelled fast in cities. I thought it surprising that they already knew about the cafe, but I guess it made sense. It had taken us an hour to get there, and from this elevated position, they may have been able to see the smoke. We approached the far end. A reception desk stretched in a graceful curve, carved from a single piece of light wood. Behind it sat an orc, the first I'd ever encountered. Deep green skin, maybe 7 feet tall, but somewhat wiry framed, like he wasn't eating properly. He was bald, clean-shaven, and although he did have a strong jawline with sharp, pronounced teeth, he didn't have the tusks that many of the stories claimed.
Stand firm and welcome to the Institute of Study.
The orc pressed 2 fingers from his right hand to his heart, then his head, as Val reciprocated the gesture.
Always.
That looked like a cultural greeting that I was not familiar with. I quickly followed suit as to not seem rude. Yeah, always.
I'm Ulgar. How can I direct you?
We are looking for a Makana Zora, and we're wondering if she is in.
Ah, you're the mercenaries we've been expecting. Please sign in, and I'll take you to Makana's lab.
Expecting us?
He slid an open visitor's logbook onto a raised section of the desk, and Val began signing us in.
Yes. After the incident, I didn't expect you would still show up.
Something was nagging at me. Hold on, which incident are you referring to?
The explosion at Makana's laboratory, of course. Such terrible business.
Val and I looked at each other in shock. The students hadn't been talking about the cafe. What time was that?
10:51, I believe.
That's the same time as the cafe.
Okay, and where is Makana Zora now? The receptionist looked dejectedly at his desk, almost unwilling to say it out loud. Who told you we'd be coming?
Danton Marshstone.
What?
That's right, the Sprite. He looked like he'd had a very long day.
His name is here in the log. He signed in 9:27 and signed out again 9:49, minutes later.
He was here for 22 minutes?
And left with plenty of time to make it to the cafe for 10:51. Okay, can you show us the way to Makana's laboratory?
The orc stood up, then kept standing up, then stood up a little more. It's very uncommon for me to have to look up at anyone, so I found it a little strange. I had correctly guessed his height earlier, as he stood shy of a full head taller than me. I'm a bit of a slow walker. I like to mosey, so it was difficult to keep up with the orc's enormous strides as he escorted us through hallways. We kept pace for about 10 minutes, and the sheer magnitude of the campus began to dawn on me. It was bigger than my entire village, and all the buildings therein combined. Up several flights of stairs, we eventually reached a long corridor accented by a red runner of equal length. Halfway down, we turned left, and the receptionist knocked on the door.
Come in.
We accepted the invite and walked inside. It was indeed a laboratory, but I saw no signs of an explosion. The only things inside were large amounts of equipment and a young elven woman. She had light hair tied into a braid and looked visibly distressed.
Alesia, these folks are inquiring about the incident. Are you able to answer their questions and let them look around?
Yes, of course.
Then I'll leave you to it.
So, would you mind telling us everything you know about the incident?
Okay. So I came in at around 8 o'clock and got to work. Danton, he's one of Makana's friends, came in at 9:30-ish. He asked about her, left something in her office, and then left. Makana came in at 10:30 on the dot, as usual. We chatted about her holiday. I told her Danton had visited, and she went into her office. I heard her talking to someone, and then the explosion at 10:51. I know, because I checked the clock so I could tell the faculty. I went in to check, but the room was a mess. I couldn't even see her body. Then Provost Sewer came in briefly to inspect, and now you.
Grand Master Odias Saw. He was big-time famous, so I'd heard of him before. Provost of the entire institute, an extraordinarily accomplished mage, he was one of the most famous spellcasters in the Western world. He was also a member of the Alarian High Council and rubbed shoulders with the king himself. A brilliant mind, certainly, but he was an academic, not an adventurer. There was a chance we'd see something he didn't. And you said she was talking to someone? Who?
I don't know. A man's voice that I didn't recognize, but that's not very unusual for her.
Why?
She talks aloud to herself a lot, talks to her thesis a lot, and she will sometimes talk through a slate now and again.
A speak slate? I'd heard about them before, but hadn't actually encountered one yet. They're much more common these days, but a century ago they were still emerging magic tools. A small, flat, black, rectangular piece of enchanted slate that allowed instantaneous oral communication across great distances. Expensive.
She has a slate. Do you know the rune code to contact her?
I'm sorry, I don't.
That's okay. Can you tell us about the voice? Did it have any distinguishing features?
It was... I don't know how to describe it. Metallic? Like they were wearing a helmet? I think they were Alarian. It was very hard to hear, and I wasn't actively trying to listen anyway.
Okay, that's helpful. Can you show us her office?
Alesia nodded and pointed us to a different room on the far side of that one. We walked over and pushed open the heavy oak doors to peek inside. She was right. There had been an explosion, and the office had been utterly devastated by the blast. We moved further in, but Alesia stayed by the door, unwilling to enter. Under the scorch marks, there were a few things that caught my interest immediately. To my right was a large empty desk with a knocked-over chair. It was big and heavy enough to survive the blast. The books that lined the walls, however, were not so lucky. To my left was a humanoid figure underneath a heavily scorched blanket sat on a throne-like chair. When Alesia didn't seem surprised by it, I assumed it wasn't some poorly hidden assassin lying in wait. Who's under the blanket?
That's Makana's thesis. It's a reconstructed automaton.
I don't know what that is, but okay. Val began inspecting the floor to determine the blast point origin. I watched her fingers trace in the air until she reached the doorway we'd just entered through.
Blast originated from the doorway. Back of the door has scorch marks, so the device must have been attached there. Can't see her body, though.
That's odd. The blast wasn't able to erase Danton. Why did it erase her?
Wait, Danton's dead?
Oops.
That is the prevailing theory, but we don't actually have solid proof yet. The investigation is still ongoing.
That was bending the truth a bit. We were nearly positive Danton was gone, but when I saw Alesia visibly calm, I understood why Val said it. The truth had a time, and it wasn't now. Going behind the desk, I began opening drawers, but stopped almost instantly. In the top right, I saw a small puzzle box that I picked up to inspect. It was a cube of rotating gears and corners. I wasn't familiar with its type, but I could probably crack it given time.
Oh, that's what Danton brought her. He's always giving her stuff. He sourced most of her automaton's parts.
I placed the box on the desk. He travelled all the way there to give her a puzzle box? Strange parting gift. Val stood up, rubbed her jawline, and turned to me.
I'll be honest. I don't think Makana died here.
She didn't?
There's absolutely no evidence to suggest it. There's no blood, no body, no evidence of her presence at all. The cafe explosion left something behind, however small, but here it didn't. I'm suspicious. A huge amount of magic was used here recently. I can still feel it in the air, but I don't know to what end.
So she escaped somehow. I walked over to the window in the room, which was remarkably intact.
Those windows only open a crack to let air in, not enough to climb through. And they're enchanted much like the rest of the building.
What do you mean?
Oh, I still have the welcome package somewhere around here.
Alesia disappeared into her workshop for a few moments before returning with a book bound in blue leather and Sistian Institute of Study Campus Handbook emblazoned on the front in gold lettering. Val took the book, opened it up to the index, read a bit, flipped through to a different page, and read a bit more.
Ah, I see. When the Institute was constructed, it was designed to prevent the manipulation of its structure and prevent teleportation in, out, or throughout by enchantments placed in key areas. That decisively rules out teleportation. I can sense those enchantments are still active.
And Alesia, Makana definitely didn't walk back past you at any point. Alesia shook her head fervently. Dang, she didn't warp out or walk out, and there was no evidence that she's still in there, corpse or otherwise. Where in the hells did she go? And why can't the windows be opened fully?
To prevent people from jumping out.
Are you serious?
Academia is very stressful.
Okay, wow. Leaning against the desk, I began fumbling with the puzzle box. Val gestured to the covered figure on the chair. Alesia nodded, and my partner gripped the edge of the heavily scorched sheet and dragged it away. Apparently, an automaton was a humanoid machine of incredible complexity, like a meticulously designed clockwork person made up of unique gold and white metals. Very unique metals. So unique, in fact, I knew I'd only seen them once before in my entire life. Val must have thought the same thing, as she rummaged through her rucksack and retrieved the strange metal book we'd recovered from Aloysius Garrick's house in East Hallow. Holding the book up to the machine man, she confirmed that they were the same materials before placing the book back in her bag. Makana's thesis was rebuilding an ancient automaton, with supplies provided by a treasure seeker who specialized in recovering ancient items. That meant the book we'd recovered was ancient too, older than anything Val or I had ever seen before. Things were getting stranger still, but the clockwork boy didn't answer any questions about Makana. In fact, it didn't even look complete. There was a large section of the chest cavity that seemed to be missing. I looked back down at the puzzle box in my hands and continued rotating various parts. Val and I had to assume that ancient stuff like that was a little more common than we expected, thus it was likely not the solution to the bizarre enigma presented to us. In a room where it is impossible to do so, how can a person vanish into thin air? Val had once said that matter cannot be destroyed, meaning Makana or her component parts had to go somewhere. She had to exist in some way, somewhere. So where in the world was Makana's aura? What a conundrum, eh? If it seems like there are a lot of questions now, just you wait. For every one we got an answer for, another two took its place. It's a lot to think on, but while you're drifting off to dreamland, come up with a few theories for what's happening and see if you can figure it all out before we did. We had 5 hours, so you have 5 hours. Maybe pondering it will help you get to sleep, or maybe you'll obsess about it. Who's to say? All I can say is, good night. Rest well, adventurers. And good hunting. Calling All Adventures is a production of the Tower Array, written and directed by Gray Smith. The host is played by Gray Smith. Valuin Emmaris is played by Ivy Smith. Harrington Mulbrand is played by Carl Bonebright. The Sprite is played by Adam McLaughlin. Fenyor Leafstrider is played by Mel Niksich. The Carriage driver is played by Caleb Jensen. Ulgar is played by Jason Francey. Alesia is played by Lauren Tucker. You can find out more about the show at thetowerarray.com.